Welcome, and on today's show, why is iron such a vital part of human health? And how do we get it into our bodies? Nutritionist Julia Karantjas, she'll have the specifics for us. Also, the Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians with Allyant will launch this year's annual scholarship program, and that'll happen on April 1st. Marcia Yale, AEBC's national president, is here shortly with all those details. Wow, someone could find themselves in the money.
This is Kelly and Company.
Thanks for being with us on your Monday. Kelly MacDonald here, host of the program, and really appreciate you stopping in and seeing what we've got for you. Of course, always lots of great content. If you want to reach out to the show, email us at kellyco@ami.ca, and you can give us a call, 1-866-509-4545. Give us some comments. Maybe we can play them on air if you leave a message for us. Always love to hear your voice, so do join in, folks, whenever you can to be a part of the show. Always fantastic. Nisreen Abdul-Majid is not with us today, but I have work to do, and wishing her and everyone out there the best today as Eid is being celebrated. This is the festival of breaking the fast, marks the end of Ramadan, the holy month of fasting. It's a joyful occasion focused on gratitude, charity, and communal prayers. So the best to everybody, and safe if you're having to travel and move around and enjoy, and certainly eat enough food for me, as that's a great part of Eid. And we talked about it Friday, and boy, I was left thinking of some of the great foods that so many people would be experiencing. But of course, those prayers and being together, the most important things at all. So something I've noticed, and I'd like to welcome in our first guest here on the program, Fern Lulham, joining us from the UK. Fern, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing all right. How are you, Kelly?
Excellent. Keeping busy on a Monday edition of the show. But Fern, I must admit, a couple of weeks ago, some bad news came my way. Not terrible. Being a blind guy, I never was able to take advantage of my campus when I was in school newspaper, the Interrobang at Fanshawe College. One of the big stories is they were going to make changes, and it was going to be removed. There is a big battle right now going on to keep this from happening. This was supposed to be the week of its last edition, but on campus they were collecting signatures, trying to see if they could turn the tide. Then over the weekend, I noticed on Twitter that the Humber School of Broadcasting is going to be coming to an end, Humber in Toronto, and I'm hearing more of this kind of thing. I don't know if you guys are having the same situation in UK. I know you went to broadcast school in the United States, Fern, but when we hear about, and I know when I was in school, we used to laugh and say, hey, there's not a lot of radio jobs, but you're still taking X number of students on for a small majority of jobs that are out there. What are you doing? And now the tide is turned where we're saying, what do you mean ending programs? What's going on?
Yeah, that is so sad, because I had the best time doing, so you were right, I did go to America, but before that I went to Wales. I went to the capital of Wales, Cardiff, and it was such a great time studying radio. That makes me really sad to think that they're going to end.
Do you keep in touch with your programs in any capacity that you went to when it came to broadcast school?
Yeah, I do. I'm still in contact with some of my tutors every now and then. They reach out and listen and hear that I've been doing certain different things. So it's really nice to kind of have that connection. I suppose it's so much easier now with social media and, the internet. There's so many ways that you can connect with people even when they're so far away. And especially for me, because I went to America, I also got to meet a lot of other international students from all over the world.
Right.
So I have, friendships from everywhere now. It's great.
It's really interesting, too, because of the interest. And unfortunately, I know for a lot of people I went to school with, so many of them aren't in the industry. So very lucky to those of us, especially if you had the dream. I think some people jumped in, started doing what they could, got jobs, and whether they figured this isn't for me, or maybe I need a switch in life, or they made that last minute decision before high school finished. Well, I'll put radio broadcasting down, away I go, or any form. And I know students that I went to school with who told me that, who still maintain that when we've had the occasional reunion and got together, which I'm very proud, because a bunch of us do get together. When you think about the number of classmates and the number that try to make themselves available, we do pretty good with generally more than half of my class gets together for this. So I think that's pretty good. And of course, you have your social media, but very sad. And you see these programs going over some of the alumni, and I'm sure you feel the same out there. You look at people who are in the industry now. Wow, they went there. Ooh, they went there too. And you just think, gosh, what a dynasty coming to an end.
Yeah, very, very sad. I mean, I completely understand what you're saying, because there was always a part of me that thought, are these schools sort of setting you up for, they're telling you, oh, you can do this, and these big dreams that you have, and you come out of university. And I definitely had that experience of coming out and applying for loads of jobs and not getting anything, back. And you're sort of like, oh, okay, this isn't as easy as I thought it was going to be. But I mean, that's really going, like you said, to the opposite end of the scale. And I think it's a shame to just almost be like, well, don't even try, because there's no point in applying, or even, there's nothing out there for you, because how are you ever going to even get your first, step on the ladder if you can't even get the training?
Well, and that's the thing. And you don't want to see that. You don't want to hear that. People are looking for that to cut the numbers down. Well, maybe where you went to school, where I often knew when I'd go to interviews, no one's going to say, well, necessarily, let me see your diploma. But, you'd get talking. Oh, do you remember, were you in school with, there was that kind of old home week feel with it. But people do change careers, whether they get in it or not, or, come out, try to find the work and end up somewhere else. And Fern, we're going to talk a little bit about different career choices today, as a matter of fact, as we start thinking about people for different reasons, maybe looking for a therapist, going on the hunt to do so. What should we be looking for, Fern? And I'm kind of curious, because we're looking maybe for ourselves to have someone to talk to. Maybe we want to become a therapist, and you've gone through that experience as we sit down, folks, with our psychotherapist, Fern Lulham. What are the qualities, Fern? Let's start there, that make a good therapist in your opinion?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that it's a great segue, and you've very nicely done, Kelly. This is why you got into radio, of course, because communication is such a big part. He's just great. He's too good. Communication, of course, is such a big part of it. And I suppose for me, that's one of the main reasons that I started becoming interested in this area, because I did do radio broadcasting. That was always my dream. I always wanted to be a communicator of some kind. And so as I've gone through my journey, and I do a bit of public speaking and various different things around communication, and I was always very interested in kind of understanding people and the emotional struggles that we all go through, and kind of what makes us human, our kind of united humanity. And so that's sort of what got me first into the realm of psychotherapy and studying it and finding out how does it all work and why do we feel the way we do and all of that sort of stuff. And I think there are various qualities that either, like you say, Kelly, make you a good psychotherapist, or that we should be looking for if we're looking for a therapist ourselves. And I think the first one that I want to highlight is this idea of talking to someone and listening to them without going straight to fixing their problems, right? Because I suppose the biggest difference between talking to a therapist and talking to your friends is that when you're chatting to your friends, very often the first thing you'll get, and correct me if I'm wrong with this, Kelly, is advice. Do you find that comes very quickly? Yeah,
the unsolicited advice, and often that is based on what you would do. Not necessarily the person you're listening to who has the thing they want to talk about, who might be either just wanting to use you as a sounding board. And even if they do want your feedback, are you able to place yourself in their shoes, not from your own perspective only?
Yes, exactly. And I think also the advice can be very kind of black and white, can't it? Like, oh, I'm having a relationship problem. Oh, dump him, straight away. just it doesn't matter. And I think we're all kind of guilty of advice, like you say, that because it's from our perspective and we're kind of a third party, we're not emotionally invested perhaps in the situation, or at least not as much as this other person. It's very easy for us to just offhandedly give this advice without really thinking, what will this mean to this person? How will this impact someone? I mean, how are you with when people come to you, Kelly, for, I don't know, whether they're looking for advice or they're just telling you about a problem that they have? What's your reaction usually?
I think that's my first thing, because I see this as layers, Fern, and that's how you kind of know if you're okay at doing this, whether you want to do it as a profession or just giving counsel, a listening ear, whatever it might be, to the people in your world that are coming to you. It's very important to know, I've got not in the right headspace, I'm doing something else, I'm distracted, my advice will be just a quick solution, or I'm not the right person to talk to. A lot is knowing yourself. So I think for me, it's a lot of, am I paying attention? Do I understand? Can I ask questions? Do I understand? Are they looking for me to give advice, or just let them rant, get upset, and be sensitive to what I say? You can't say to somebody all the time, well, that was a dumb thing to do. There's no moments that's not just going to go over too well, right? So I really feel over years, because I've always thought, hey, I'm a pretty good listener, I'm really good at my advice. But the proof is in the pudding over a lot of time of learning, I guess that wasn't the greatest advice when they come back. And also, giving advice is very crucial, making it clear even more so, and understanding somebody may not follow every step of your advice, and then you're going to be at fault for it.
Yes, that's true. That's true. They might not do it the way that you're having in your head. Yeah, that's true. And then it can come back and bite you, kind of thing. But sure. I think, you bring up so many good points there. The fact that sometimes it's just about asking someone what they need instead of just assuming, because sometimes people do just want to rant or just want to vent and tell you stuff instead of you fixing it. Because I think one of the things that I've realized as a psychotherapist is that one of the biggest things we want is just a bit of validation. And that sound, it can sound to people like, oh, you're just looking for attention. But actually, so many of us become anxious because our whole lives we're being reassured with good intentions, often from our friends and family members. Oh, this is nothing to worry about. Don't worry, you're being silly. But what that can actually then do is create in us this feeling that, oh, maybe my feelings aren't valid. Maybe I am being silly and I shouldn't worry about this. And actually what we need is to come to a balance of, there's a healthy amount of worry to have, and it is okay and natural for me to feel these things in this situation, but it doesn't mean that, there's a point where it becomes maladaptive or not productive to worry. But to have those feelings validated and to say, actually, no, that's completely normal that you would feel that way, often is the thing that my clients, get the most, especially in the early therapy sessions, is just, oh, I'm actually allowed to feel this way, and you're giving me permission to feel this way, because that's something that a lot of people in their life just don't do or aren't comfortable doing, because they just want to make it better as soon as they possibly can.
Well, and Fern, as we talk, I'm keeping myself in check as this for you. You have clients that come and talk to you. I may have a friend that comes and speaks to me, so I might be quick to say, well, I have to be sure I'm listening and I'm not just giving an answer to be dismissive. You're in a different, and if someone looking for that counseling support is looking for someone different than their buddy that, hey, you know what, I really had a rough day. Can I rant for a moment? Yeah, sure you can. So my perspective, I'm reminding myself as we talk, what would I look for? What would I believe I'm to be here to do? What is my role, especially when someone's saying, hey, I'm sitting down to talk with my counselor?
Yes. Well, I think such a big part of that is just creating this safe space where it's actually okay to express any feelings, and you're not going to be met with a judgment or something where somebody says you're being silly, you're being too much this, you're being not enough that. We get that so often. And again, I'm not saying that this is a bad thing, in terms of our friendships. Like you say, it is a slightly different relationship, the therapeutic relationship. And very often people are doing this and saying these things to us to be nice and to try and say, oh, I don't want you to feel bad. Let's look at the positives, or, let's focus on this and distract you from how you're feeling. And actually such a big part of it is just creating this space in terms of therapy where we're curious and we're looking at what you're saying and we're asking questions about that and we're exploring different parts of it. I think as a therapist, and also what's maybe helpful if you don't want to give too much advice, is just asking questions instead of giving answers, because we always want to kind of rush to that solution.
That's
that
it.
Answer.
Yes. Jump ahead and pull up we think, or this is where I believe you're going with this, instead of that taking time just to listen and ask those questions.
Yes, exactly. And so really delving deep into it. And a lot of times you ask something that somebody just hasn't considered, like I know we've talked before about you sort of get people that say, oh, I just want to be happy, or I just want to be successful. And you ask just, well, what is that for you? What does that look like to you? And actually so many of us have never sat and thought about that. We've never actually thought, and even when it comes down to like, what do I need? A lot
Yes,
of
for
times we
ourselves.
expect other people to know what we need, and we get very angry with them, particularly, I'm thinking about our partners in particular, when they don't know what we need. How could they not know? And actually, we haven't taken the time to sit down and go, well, I don't know what I need in this situation. If we can't figure it out, how is anyone else supposed to?
That's right. Where'd the mind reading technique go? They broke the crystal ball.
Yes, absolutely. It's not on, is it? So yeah, and so that's a big part of it. And the other part of it, though, I would say is, because I suppose up till this point, I've made it very clear that we don't want to be judgmental. We want to validate. We want to make people feel like they can express themselves and not have to filter themselves. But the other part that I think makes a good therapist is actually being able to strike the balance between understanding and empathy and building that, relationship and that bond with someone, but also gently challenging them sometimes. Because I think if all we ever do is say, yes, you're right, and you have every right to feel that way, and I agree, and, we don't ever kind of challenge anything that they say, or even kind of just prod it or ask a question that might make them look at it from a different perspective, that might not be helpful, because in that sense, they're just running the narrative that they would always have in their mind anyway, and they're just saying it out loud to us instead of having it in their own mind. So sometimes it is just about gently, while we're validating their feelings and saying, yes, you have every right to feel that way, at the same time, challenging it and asking questions around it and saying, actually, can we look at it from a different perspective, or can we do something different, is not taking away anything from the fact that what they feel is right. So there's almost two truths going on at the same time. I think very often we think it's either this or that. Either I'm valid in feeling this way, or I need to change something. But actually, sometimes both of those things can be true at the same time.
Do we have the danger of, with those questions, maybe encouraging them to go down some rabbit hole that takes them away from what we're, I don't want to say what we're hoping, because it's about what they discover, the self-discovery. Do we worry about that in those questions, obviously you're asking for a reason, but also thought out by yourself as a counselor?
I think it's just very much about saying, this is, please answer either way. And again, it's another part of being a counselor is always checking in and saying, I feel like, this is what you're saying, or I feel like this might feel a certain way for you, but correct me if I'm wrong, and genuinely being open to them saying, no, that's not how I feel at all. Very often we're not comfortable with that in our everyday life, being corrected. We want to be right. We want to say, yes, oh, this is how you feel. And I think actually a big part of being a psychotherapist is staying grounded in the sense that I'm not the expert here. We are a team of two working together. I always try and see my clients as the expert on their life. They know themselves better than I do. And so actually asking questions and genuinely wanting to hear what their answer is, whether or not it's what you thought or it goes along with, what you've created in your own mind, that is such a big part of it, because being wrong isn't a bad thing. It's just, oh, okay, then I had it wrong, and now you've told me that, and we can explore that. And sometimes even that process is therapy in itself, because it's modeling for our clients that sometimes getting things wrong is okay, and we can have that miscommunication between us, but together we can work through that, and it can still end up in a positive interaction.
You're always very open on the show, and it always, surprises. It takes so much knowing of oneself, being honest with oneself. That self-awareness in your work, how important is it?
Hugely important. We do a lot when you're training to become a therapist. Such a huge part of it is knowing yourself, knowing what you struggle with, because a lot of times people can view therapists as, this is somebody who has reached an epiphany, and they've kind of got it all together, they've got it all sorted. And often as a therapist you can feel the weight of that responsibility. And so actually in small ways showing your client that I'm still just a human being, I still make mistakes. I don't have it all together is a really positive thing. And also just being really aware for yourself as a therapist, might bring something up for me. How can I look after myself in this session? And also, where do I need to learn? Where can I sort of grow? And learning, I always say that you learn just as much from your clients as they learn from you. And every time I finish with a client, I will always talk to my supervisor, which is part of therapy. Everyone has a supervisor that you can chat things through with. And every time I'm always asked, what have you learned from this client? And I think that is so wonderful, because that helps you to develop your personality, not only as a therapist, but just in general. You're constantly learning and developing. And that's what we really need, is just to stay curious and open-minded and just always be willing to learn something new.
We talked earlier about in the broadcasting field, people leave, jobs change, and things like that, and people often end up somewhere else. For you, Fern, that time between then and becoming a therapist, was it very important to you, do you feel, for your self-awareness, that personal growth to put you in the position you're in now?
Yeah, I do think so. I think, I learned so much because such a big part of my journey in broadcasting has been interviewing people and talking to people and learning people's stories. And like I say, the element that really fascinated me about people's stories is the emotional journey that they've been through. Who has this made them become? How has life shaped them in a very specific way to where they are now? And what's that experience created them, and how they reacted to that? All of that stuff just fascinated me. And that's kind of what's sent me down this path to go on this journey now to be a psychotherapist. And I think that, again, all of that and, talking to other people has taught me a lot about myself and my own journey. And I've done my own therapy, also as part of the training to become a therapist, you do your own therapy. And I think all of it has kind of just blended into this amazing path for me, where I've been able to combine this love for communication with this, fascination with the emotional and the psychosocial side of life, but also in helping people and really, creating something where you can make a meaningful difference and connect with someone and just make them feel less alone, which I think is such a big part of both radio broadcasting and, of course, psychotherapy.
Fern, absolutely fantastic. Thank you again for being so open and thought out as to how to answer this tricky question, because so many of us, just like broadcasting, oh, you should be on the radio. Oh, you should be a comic. Oh, you should be an actor. You should be a therapist because you're a good listener. Thank you for kind of unpacking this for us.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. You should be a radio guy because you're just the best at segues.
Keep telling that loud enough. Maybe someone will keep paying me. Thanks. Fern has been talking to us today on the show about what we should be looking for in a therapist. Fern will be back with us in a couple of weeks on the program. So I got an article I just want to go over here before we jump into our nutrition talk. Science News, this is from. Mars may have been home to some sun-soaked sandy beaches with gently lapping waves. Don't know how much you get that in your mind when you picture Mars. This is according to a new study. An international team of scientists used data from the Huron-Mars rover to identify some of the layers of rock on the planet's surface. This strongly suggests the presence of an ancient northern ocean. The new research offers the clearest evidence that the planet actually contained a significant body of water at one time and a more habitable environment for life. According to Benjamin Cardenas, assistant professor of geology at Penn State and co-author on this particular study, he says, we found evidence for wind, waves, no shortage of sand. Unlike other rovers that they used, this came equipped with rover penetrating radar, which allowed it to explore the planet's subsurface using both low and high frequency radar to penetrate the Martian soil and identified buried rock formations. So when they reviewed the data, it sort of revealed to them some similar layered structures to the beaches on Earth, formations called for shore deposits that would have sloped down to the oceans and formed what sediments would have been carried by tides and waves off of a large body of water. Now that jumps out to them immediately because it suggests that there were waves, which means there was a dynamic interface of water. Cardina said, when we look back at life on Earth, it was that interaction between water, wind, ocean, and lands. So this is taking a good snapshot of these ancient environments that we had, and of course showing what the Martian environment would have had, suggesting that a life-friendly, warm, and wet period must have spanned millions and millions of years. Really interesting to me when you think about our obsession as we've had with Mars being so similar, so like to Earth, and travels that we are thinking of doing to a planet that's near enough and most similar, and potentially could support life as we know it. So very interesting when you see all the things that the rover has allowed them to see when it's described to us. So I find that fascinating. Thought I'd bring that out there, this item that came out last month. We're looking for members of the disability community. We'd like them to join our research panel. Our research panel guides us with every decision we make here at AMI, including programming, media consumption, and accessibility. Participants are participated for all long-form studies that they get involved with. For more information, or maybe how you can join, go to ami.ca/panel. We'd absolutely love to hear from you. Follow Kelly and Company on Instagram and Twitter at Kelly & Co. AMI. That's at Kelly & Co. AMI on Instagram and Twitter. So let's chat iron. And I smile, I chuckle, because as a kid, I had to have my Flintstone vitamins and so much more because the doctor said, hey, he has an iron deficiency. When I would go to the gym, I'd work out, then sometimes sneak over and give blood. And they would say to me, hey, your iron's deficient, after they test my blood. And of course, my big guy, big shot attitude was, hey, well, can't you just add it? And they'd remind me, no. And this being a liver eater, I mean, I love liver and red meat. So my understanding is all that's good. What is iron? Why is it important for human health, and what's the right amount? Nutritionist Julia Karantjas is here with some of the correct answers for my thoughts. Julia, welcome. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you?
You see how much I relate to this. I'm good. People talk to me about chronic fatigue sometimes, Julia. They're just tired, and I've heard people say, oh, it could be iron. But our medical profession sometimes is, maybe could be, just take some vitamins. Can it be a sign of this missing nutrient?
Yeah. Yes. Chronic fatigue, pale skin, that just exhaustion feeling. It can definitely be a sign of low iron. And iron is also not something that's hard to test for. So it's something that you can very easily chat with your doctor about and do a blood test for. It is important. Iron is the key component of hemoglobin, which is the protein in your blood that delivers oxygen to your body. And so you could, I mean, I think just by saying that one fact, you can understand that if your iron is low and you're not getting a lot of oxygen to your body, you're going to feel very tired. So it's definitely related. But we do have a lot of iron in our food, but it's a good place to start if you're feeling very tired and brain fog, if you're having trouble concentrating.
So do we find, in your experience, and again, I know maybe I'm asking you much more of a question that's more down the medical line, but do you find that most people, they may have, like myself, a deficiency, but not necessarily be into a dangerous area? So sometimes we just figure the solution, and again, like you said, it could be definitely tested, or in my case, when I was donating blood, they would, your iron's low. Obviously, I'm assuming if it was really low, they would say, hey, man, you need to see someone, or just sit down, we're calling 911. If there was any particular danger. But is it that kind of thing where people just generally need some vitamin, are lacking in something, so it's just kind of, I don't want to say dismissed, but placed there, just people are told, as we get into the discussion about foods, eat more liver, everyone's favorite?
I mean, diet is definitely the first place to start. I wouldn't say iron deficiency is super common, but it's also not foreign. The deal with iron, though, it's like calcium, where it needs some help. I mean, vitamin C is very good to help with the absorption of iron.
Oh, okay.
And so it
Right.
might not necessarily be that you're low in iron, but that your body needs help to properly assimilate it into the body. And I mean, like you just mentioned, Kelly, a multivitamin, this is where a multivitamin is very helpful, because it's going to have those like small doses of all those vitamins that the other vitamins would need. And that's why it can be very helpful, because it might not be that you actually need iron, but that you might need these other things, because you can have too much iron. And
Right.
I think with vitamin D, which we've chatted about, and vitamin C, which is water soluble, those are things that you could very easily go out, buy, and take without too much worry, without having to go get a blood test. They would be very beneficial. Vitamin C is even water soluble. And so they're typically very safe. Iron is a metal. It isn't the same as a water soluble vitamin. And so to just go out and buy an iron supplement isn't always necessarily the right move. Perhaps starting with a multivitamin that has a more tailored dose of iron, as opposed, so something that's a little bit higher for women who do require more iron, less for men. Active men need more iron than sedentary men. Older men need pretty much no iron, unless, of course, it's a medical issue. And so the iron is a bit trickier to play with. And so I wouldn't say it's this, easily noted thing. Oh, I'm tired, I should take some iron. I mean, that's
Right.
not the route that I would typically go. I would try other things first, and then also see, are they having other symptoms?
So
and
with
what
that,
the diet looks like.
Yeah, well, that's what I was just going to ask. So with that being said, our diet of it, general, let's just say general meal, let's say 18-year-old, 40-year-old, 60-year-old. What foods contain iron, and what would you say that intake should be, especially with a lot of us, let's turning more to, say, chicken or vegetarian or something or fish. What do we got to watch, and what foods, first of all, contain?
So the typical non-vegetarian does get enough iron. You're going to find, so there's two types of iron. One is a little more absorbable than the other, but there are vegan and non-vegan foods that contain iron. The most well-known with the most abundant sources are red meats, like you mentioned, organ meat. We know there's a lot of iron in there. We also know there's a lot of B12 in there, which is very good for energy, which is also, how it could help you feel more energized and less exhausted. But eggs, so if you don't want to eat meat, but you might eat eggs contain iron. And then lentils, if you're vegan, legumes can contain iron, and dark leafy greens like kale, that's a great source of iron as well. Tofu would also give you some. And fortified cereals. So I don't normally toot processed foods horn, but it isn't all evil. There are upsides. There are some cereals out there, boxed cereals, where there are fortified nutrients in it, and they can be a very helpful source of iron for people that potentially don't like to eat meat, or are vegan, children who tend to be a little bit of a picky eater. These cereals are fortified with iron, and they can be a good source. So if you don't want to eat meat, you can have cereals, you can have lentils, you can have tofu, you can have dark leafy greens, mushrooms also. So it's there. So like I said, it's not a very common deficient nutrient, because it is in our diet.
Yeah, but it's a tough sell for some people. Growing up, eat your iron eat your liver because of iron. You'd sit there and that's what
Gross.
we'd hear, because it was the big turnoff. Now, I do recall the cereal commercials, though, mentioning, because we went through that point where we did need to get the word out more. I don't know if doctors got together, nutritionists, and said, look it, man, this is a problem that we could easily render. But all the foods we're talking about for back in the day are not the most attractive foods for a lot of people.
Exactly. And iron is extremely important for growth and development. So even more so for the younger demographic, less so as we get older. Pregnant women also need more iron. They need more iron than a non-pregnant woman. Again, growth and development. They're growing something. And so this nutrient is very important for kids. And like you said, Kelly, I mean, most kids are not eating organ meats or steak or steak and kale every day for lunch or dinner. I mean, that's just not as common. And so these fortified foods can be very helpful in those instances, because it is really important. for growth, development, brain health, making sure you're not exhausted. These school-age children need to be learning and then doing activities. And so it's very important. And so it's something to be mindful of. But before you go and start supplementing with a bunch of iron, I would consult a doctor with a blood test, because iron is a metal, like I said before, and it can be detrimental if you take too much and you don't actually need it.
And there's the difference, as we talked about, as you said, age, but also male and female.
Exactly. So just like really quick examples, if you take a closer dive into multivitamins, and which are designed for the mass population, and you look at a woman's multivitamin versus a woman's multivitamin has around 12 milligrams of iron, whereas a men's can have 2 to 4. So that's a pretty big difference. And then the multivitamins are for active women. So women who are exercising more, or perhaps are, in a profession that is, in the athletic nature, those multivitamins start off at 18 milligrams of iron. And then you look at a multivitamin for an older gentleman, right, in the senior citizen age group, and there's 0 iron in that. And so those aren't even like medical differences. Those are just based on age, age and your biological sex. So it is there are difference. It's not like vitamin C.
The age thing really gets me, I must admit. I again, not ever really raised to think about it, being told as a kid, you got to do this. As you get older, hey, your iron's low. Yeah, I know, I got to keep that up. But then to where you're a senior, don't worry about it as much. What?
Yeah. Exactly. And that information is not talked about as much. But exactly.
And I think it's dangerous to talk about it. It's almost dangerous, because then we start thinking things, and you just, as they did at that point, actively went out to promote. What about seasonal? We know with us in wintertime, we have our issues, like vitamin D, for example. We get concerned. Anything that we need to think about regarding iron in the seasons?
Not that I've come across. There might be something out there that I haven't come across yet, but nothing that's been drawn to my attention that I've seen over and over. That's a pattern. No, vitamin D is definitely that big one, because it's so closely correlated with the sun, but iron is not so much. And vitamin C, which you need for the iron absorption, also not, you don't get that from the sun. So it wouldn't really be a seasonal thing. In the winter, you might feel more tired, but it wouldn't necessarily mean that you need more iron. That there's probably other things at play there that are not iron related.
Do you run into the potential of any danger eating, say you love your organs and you're into liver 4 or 5 times a week? I know you can obviously have too much iron, not a good thing. Will eating and mixing with vitamins, or what is the formula for regarding iron?
The formula would be taking a separate iron. So you can have a multivitamin that has a little bit of everything, which is great. And then you have these single nutrient vitamins. So, okay, I need more vitamin C, I need more vitamin D, and you can buy them singly. The worry would be to buy a single dose iron and to start taking it without having blood work done, without knowing where you're starting, even if that you would require it. And I think if you did eat a lot, like you'd ate organ meat every single day, I just as a precaution would ask my doctor for some blood work, just to see where I'm at, because you don't want to cause problems. There aren't too many people that do eat themselves into a problem, but you can never say never. So you always want to go on the safe side with that.
Well, and I think if you're looking at certain things too, there's the level where the doctor might say to you, hey man, you're eating too much of that because of other things in eating too much organ meat or red meat. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And awesome. And then it could be the absorption thing. Maybe you don't need the iron, but you need its buddies. So that's the benefit of eating food. When you eat this, you get all the nutrients, different nutrients from the food. Balanced. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
And I think that's the thing, because as you mentioned, absorption, talking vitamin C or something like that, needing that to help get that iron in there as the carrier or supporter, so important.
Yeah, supporter,
we're feeling like, yay, I'm eating enough liver, yay. Well, hold on, you need about 12 more oranges a month. Oh,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, nutrients all work together.
Fantastic.
There isn't a
Yes.
single thing. Yeah.
At the end of the day, Julia, I think if we can be taking our mixed vitamins, eating a balanced diet, we're
Yeah.
off to the races.
I agree. It's a great base to start, and your medical professional can help you with the rest for bigger concerns. But yeah, I agree.
Talking iron with Julia today. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks a lot.
Sounds good.
Julia Karantjas joins us on the program every Monday, and we get into these conversations, and lots of always questions and make you think. I always find it interesting to balance things out, and just always going back to a balanced diet is really the complete way to go. But unfortunately, the human body doesn't work that way, and there's always something that we have to stop and say, hey, it might be a little more work that has to go into it. As I said, when I would not even realize how that deficiency, because it was just treated, well, you just got to take your vitamins. And, until I went and worked out, then went to go give blood, and they're saying, whoa, what's going on here? Your iron's low. Oh, well, I just came from the gym. Sir, put your hand out. Slap, bad, man. What are you doing? So I know there's so many of those little things you don't think about, and they may play it off, and only under a certain circumstance may you have to do a little more. Folks, check out our podcast when you get a chance. Subscribe to it using your favorite podcast platform of choice. While you're in there, give us a rating and review. I'd also like you to subscribe to our YouTube page. We're putting content up there daily, and sometimes some extended stuff will slip up there. Sometimes segments for you to pass on maybe to someone. We're talking about something. When we were talking heart health with Travis last month, a great segment, and it's kind of cool. We've put it out on social media, but it's out there off of YouTube. You can do it yourself or share it with people that you think maybe can benefit. So that's the beautiful thing. Subscribe to our YouTube page when you get that time, and we'd really appreciate it. Always appreciate your comments and supports out there as well. The Alliance for Equality of Blind Canadians, AEBC, and in partnership with Allyant, are going to launch this year's annual scholarship program on April 1st. Marcia Yale joins us, AEBC's national president, who has all the details. Marcia, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
All right, hanging in, and of course keeping busy with the show. And AEBC, first of all, what's the news? Tell people a little bit about AEBC these days, because I know we haven't had a lot of time talking to you guys about what the news is over there lately.
Well, right now we're in the middle of getting our questions to our government leaders and the ones that want to be, because it's an election right now.
Right.
So we're sending questions to the party leaders to try and figure out what they really think about people with disabilities and how much they're going to do for us or not do for us if they become the leading party.
So in the past, how does that work out? I mean, in the way of responses. Oh, okay.
Usually,
that well. Eh?
Yeah, usually that well. We did the same thing for the Ontario election, and we got a couple of responses, which we posted. But we did it for the Liberal leadership race and got no responses. So we're not sure what Mark Carney himself thinks.
So do you guys find that if you get responses, are we put in a bucket together? Now, I love seeing organizations work together, disability communities work together when we can, but let's be fair, there are specifics to each of the communities, and I'm kind of curious, when you get any response, is it more of a group, or does someone take time to look at it from the perspective of what you're asking? Maybe something, and I'm not saying everything you ask is all just based on low vision or blind community, but do you feel there's been the work to at least answer it properly and specifically with what you've asked?
Depends. It's, sometimes you get someone that's really interested. A few years back, we sent letters to the health ministers, to two of them that year, about the fact that medical devices are still not accessible. Things
Right,
like
of course.
glucometers and all of those things, insulin pumps. And
Yep,
we got
yep.
no answer from the first minister. When the second one took over, he passed us right to the Director General of the Medical Devices Division of Health Canada. And that's a contact that we continue to use every once in a while. And I think he got it. I think he actually clued in. The trouble is that the Health Canada, the Act, only talks about devices that they need to be safe and effective. It doesn't matter whether you can use them independently or not.
Right.
Yeah. So
very
hopefully that
interesting.
will change soon.
I hope so.
Sooner than later.
Well, it's so important, but what also is important, and Fedora's off to you guys, of course, for the relationship, because we need that. We need the person that at least can stop and listen or say, this is where this is best directed to.
That's right. Yeah.
Fantastic. All right, let's talk scholarship. Tell us a little bit about the scholarship. And it's been around for a while, Mars. Tell us a little bit about the history.
So it's been around since at least 2000, if not before. So this will be at least the 25th year for it, 26th year.
Nice.
We have, for the last 12, 13 years, we've had Allyant, formerly T-Based Communications, as a sponsor. And since 2017, we have an anonymous donor. So between them this year, we've got a chunk of money that we haven't decided how we're going to disperse it yet. But we also have 3 designated scholarships, 2 from the BC affiliate, 1 in memory of Tom Teranishi, who was a longstanding member, and 1 in honor of Betty Noble, who is also a longstanding member. And then our John Ray Legacy Fund is putting forward a scholarship in John's honor this year in memory.
Very nice.
So that'll be good. And then we'll decide what to do with the rest. But all I can say is that the minimum amount for each scholarship will be $1,000, which is still a kind of nice little chunk of change.
It's definitely helpful and nice. So when you determined what to do with the rest, and I'm going to picture a panel that sits down and thinks about how many, how much. Okay, that's all great and all, but what is, when we look at criterion, does it change from year to year? What for those ones, for the extra? I'm assuming the other 3, they're kind of more specific. What people, where they go, who maybe who they go to, but more so what people when they're applying, where that kind of covers. But the others, does that vary in what people may be doing as their educational piece?
Well, basically, we have 1 application, so people don't have to apply for 5 or 6 different scholarships.
Right. Okay. Yep.
They do 1 application, and the BC affiliate would love to see their scholarships go to BC students, which usually isn't a problem because BC is one of our largest provinces in terms of
so somebody always applies.
Blind students. Blind students seem to gravitate to Vancouver or Kelowna. And so we seem to have no trouble, giving a BC student a scholarship. Everyone has the same criteria in terms of the main ones. They have to be blind, deafblind, or partially sighted. And we have definitions of those. They have to be Canadian citizens or permanent residents, and they have to be taking a minimum of 2 courses in their chosen university, college, vocational, wherever they're going. That's post-secondary. That's, we don't care. If it's post-secondary and you can and you're taking at least 2 courses and the rest of it fits, you qualify. And they have to send us essays about themselves. They have to send us a reference letter. The application form is pretty simple itself. It just asks for, normal stuff. And, they have to tell us about themselves and basically sell us as to, how they are as a student and what they, how they've handled their challenges and what their,
Right.
What accessible education means to them and their community involvement. It's a list of things that has grown over the years, and every year we look at it again and say, yes, is this working? Are we getting enough to figure out who should get the scholarships, or have we missed something?
Yeah.
And so it changes every once in a while, but it's been the same for the last couple of years anyway.
What do you consider the most important question, Marcy, that's on there that should stay on? Like you say, it may change, but to give a hint to somebody out there who might be looking for, hey, I want to reach out, I'd love some hints for them, but I'm curious what you consider. I don't want to say the most important question. They're all important, but the one that has to stay there.
I want to know how these students are giving back to their community. So what are they doing that makes them proud outside of school? How are they giving back to the people that have helped them, or to their neighborhood, or to, any organization that they might be a part of? Because that shows what they're made of, really. It does. It shows what kind of person they are.
Yeah, I think you want people very aware of their surroundings, of who, like you said, who they are, but what importance life is. Not just getting up, going to school, going to work, and then, coming home and not have, but what do you want to do with your community? What do you want to do to enjoy your interests and your hobbies and stuff like that? I think I would find such. Not that everybody's got to be so well-rounded. That's not what I'm looking for.
No.
I think that'd be interesting to a panel putting together this stuff. How often have you been on the panel, the scholarship decision-making panel?
Oh, well, I was on the committee in like 2003, 4, 5, 6, 7, I think, and then I'm pretty sure, because every once in a while I find an old document and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I've been on it since 2018, I believe. 2018, I think, was the first time. And I've been on it ever since. So 18, 19, 20, and the 5. Yeah. So it's been a while.
How frustrating is it? How frustrating is it for you because of all the potential qualified candidates that may not be able to get in?
It's really frustrating knowing that they are out there, and we know they're out there. It's just, how do you get the information out to them? And our list of email contacts keeps growing. It grew quite a bit this last year because we were able to get a list of colleges and university contacts. And we'll see whether that helps this year. We'll see. I'm looking forward to seeing what we get. And applications open tomorrow. Isn't that exciting?
I was just going to say, what do people need to, we know a bit of what they need to do. Where should they go for that information? Because we're throwing a lot at them right now. And how long is the scholarship process open?
So everything is going to be, actually, it's already up at blindcanadians.ca/programs with an S/scholarship without an S. Everything's up there already, but please don't apply before tomorrow. We have it in French and English. So the main page that I just gave has the 2 links, one for English, one for French. We have an online application form this year where people can upload their documents directly into the application form, or they can still email them and the application form to scholarship@blindcanadians.ca. and the application closes at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific on Friday, May 30th. So it's almost 2 months completely.
Yeah.
So,
and I always say when we talk about our scholarship here at AMI, folks, don't leave it too long. Jump on it, but take the time to fill out, think it out, go back to it, and then get it in. Don't, I'll work on that next week. I'll have time in a couple of weeks to do it. It's that kind of thing that's so vital. And Marcy, as you know, it's a tremendous thing to be able to sit back and go through these. So it's an honor at both ends for everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Marcy joining us from AEBC, president of AEBC, and so much to go forward, folks. For those of you looking for the scholarship, as Marcy said, go check it all out and start getting ready to apply starting tomorrow, April 1st, And that deadline in late May. On our next program, what are the ingredients to thrilling, have you at the edge of your seat mystery TV? Film critic Michael McNeely reviews The Resident on Netflix, giving us his thoughts that makes for satisfying mystery. We'll get into that conversation. Have a great day. We're waving at you. Talk to you tomorrow.
Thanks for tuning in to Kelly and Company. Follow us on all social media, and don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel for more.